Okay, good evening, everyone. Tonight we will have a broadcast of the UBS NextGen Leaders College Decision webinar. We understand that you guys are in a crucial time right now and you are looking to select the most competitive college that you can attend of those that you've been accepted. So we will start this webinar with Julian Johnson, our Executive Vice President here at SEO Scholars.
Okay, well, thanks. Welcome everybody who's on this Hangout. The aim here really is to try and help you better understand some of the advantages to attending the most selective school that you've been admitted to. This point has been kind of brought home a few times in different ways, but really wants to kind of take you through it so you can make a compelling case if you need to with your parents or others who are involved in this decision-making process with you, and so that you fully understand as well what the value is. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the non-academic benefits to more selective schools, and my colleague Aish Najulu is going to talk more about the academic advantages. So let me kind of lead it up. I should say that a good deal of what I have to share with you comes from my 12 years of working here at SEO, where we run, as you may know, a very competitive internship program that works with some of the most selective employers around the country, and where there's access to really a very well compensated jobs. And so we work ourselves with literally thousands of students who apply to us every year that we in turn then pass on a subset of those students to our partners, which include UBS as an example. So the first point I'd really emphasize to you, and this is something that you might not have learned in the course of your everyday kind of family life, but the school that you attend really will influence the access you have to internships and ultimately full-time jobs coming out of college. So as you're well aware, there are several thousand four-year colleges in this country. No company recruits at all of those colleges. In most cases, even some of your best-known companies might only recruit at 50 to 60 schools, either nationally or within their region, and if it's within their region, likely more at 20 to 30 schools in order to find talent for their incoming internships, their summer internship programs, or their incoming full-time hires. It's just not cost-effective for any employer to go to 1,000 colleges. And keeping in mind that if you really look at it, there are obviously, I say, several thousand colleges throughout the United States. So it's going to vary a bit by region what colleges a company might focus on, but they're going to limit the number of colleges that they recruit at just for basic economic reasons. So top companies recruit generally for their best internship positions at more selective schools. And the reason why they do that is that they assume that students who have managed to secure an opportunity at a competitive school are likely students that they will look to be as better performing students, smarter students, and granted you can kick around the definition of smart, but they will use that selection process that a college is already employing to pick students as a filter for them to capitalize on in finding hardworking and talented individuals. So if you kind of think of the logic of it, if you wind up going to a selective school, an employer knows that that school likely has looked through 10, 15, 20,000 applicants, most of whom were quite competitive applicants to begin with, and then selected a handful or a percentage of those. So if I'm an employer, in a sense, I know most of the work has already been done for me as an employer in identifying talented and hardworking students. And that's what employers are looking for, both talented and that where individuals have demonstrated that talent and ability through their past effort, and hardworking, which they've also demonstrated by accomplishing or achieving what was necessary to gain admission into those schools. So they kind of use it that way to help them really kind of find talent. But it's also a factor of also not only do they look at those schools, but they also will determine what type of roles they'll present at a school. So while an employer might recruit at 50 schools or even more, or receive applications for more, they might look to, in most cases, will look to fill their best positions, the highest paying positions, the ones with the best tracks to management roles over time in those companies, to a smaller subset of schools. again, using the premise that the college has done most of the screening work for them. They don't want to look through 10,000 resumes to find 150 people. They'd rather go and look at a small number of colleges, look at the applicants from them, where there's going to be a higher concentration of high-achieving individuals based on that school's own selection criteria. So it's not simply what schools companies recruit at, but it's also what roles they recruit at those schools. There are many schools that SEO in our career program recruit at and that's really sometimes a very small subset of schools that our career program recruits at, that our own partners recruit at, and they're recruiting at those schools for what they call front office opportunities, revenue generating opportunities, roles that are very important to the company's success. They may recruit at another 20 or 30 or 40 schools, but they're recruiting at those schools for roles that are of lesser importance to the company's success overall. So depending on what college you're at is what kind of opportunities might be presented there by a company, even though that company may recruit at your college and other colleges, but they may be selective in what opportunities they present at your college. The more competitive your college, likely the better the recruiting roles, the roles will be for summer internships, and the better paying those roles might be. So that's kind of one of the kind of section looking at access to internships and ultimately jobs, because internships typically nowadays lead to full-time opportunities if a person does well, particularly when they're a junior, between that junior and senior summer. The other part I mentioned to you, another part is about just the better basic credibility. So the reality is that employers, and SEO is an employer as an example, but all employers will look at basically two things when they're sourcing talent. One is going to be what was the GPA of that student at the school, and you're going to learn about our emphasis on helping you maintain a high GPA, what we call GPA management, how important your GPA is. But the other things they're going to look at is what school that individual attends, the brand, the strength of the reputation of that school. If I give you a very kind of simple example, kind of very quickly said, if I'm looking to recruit for a job, a kind of an entry-level position with a person having 0 to 2 years experience, if they don't have the experience that I'm looking for, but I see they went to a school that would indicate that they're a very accomplished student and a very hardworking student, even though they might have the experience, there's a high probability I might bring that student in, or that young person in, right, to really kind of gauge their capabilities, because if they're smart enough, the assumption will be is they can learn the job. So if you go to a school that, heaven help you, that you're selecting from a subway ad, perhaps, people would be more inclined to think, well, okay, maybe 1 out of 100 students at that school are highly talented and motivated individuals. But if you instead went to a Wesleyan, you went to a Duke, you went to a Skidmore, the employer is going to assume that most of the students there are highly talented individuals. So what's my chance if the person has no experience of me finding a highly talented individual for a spot coming from a less well-known school, very low in my mind as an employer? If they're going to a school where it's a more selective institution, I know they're likely to be smart and hardworking. I want to meet that person, because while they might not have the right experience, my assumption would be they likely will pick it up pretty fast. So, or I may have another role at my organization. So school brand also implies a certain credibility about what you bring to the table. So you want to send those signals off that, well, I am a really high-achieving individual. I'm willing to work hard. I pick up things fast, and you can see that by the quality of the school I'm attending. I'm going to mention two other kind of related things, but in a little bit less detail. The more competitive school you go to, the more likely you're going to meet people from the upper middle class part of America. And the upper middle class part of America, and America very often doesn't talk about people being upper class, but the reality is there really is the upper class, very often referred to as the upper middle class. Right? You're more likely to meet people from those backgrounds, people whose parents also were college educated with graduate degrees in most cases, who are part of the economic elite of the country. Right? The advantage of being around those people is you get to pick up the social nuances, or mores, as you may have learned in a sociology class, of people at that kind of socioeconomic status. Because those are the people who really kind of shape the culture of corporate America. So I like to point out to people, it's not the people you see on Jerry Springer. It's not the people on the Ricky Lake show who are shaping the culture. It's the people who are more often depicted in the front page of the business section of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Their children are the ones going to the schools we want you to attend. And by interacting with them and meeting them and being around them and observing them, you will see some of the cultural differences that might be different from the culture you grew up in. It's not that their culture is better or worse, but it's no different than if you thought you were going to do your business or kind of pursue your career in China or in Saudi Arabia or in some other country. You know, it'd be very important to know the social mores and cultural norms in order to be successful there. That's what you can find at more competitive colleges, because the children of the people who run this country and who are in the upper rungs of this country in terms of management of corporations and institutions, their children will be there, and you get a chance to actually kind of learn a bit more about the kind of the social norms and interest, which allows you to build bridges with people like that when you meet them in the workplace, much more effectively. So there's a real advantage there of becoming familiar with those cultural norms, and you will encounter those at more competitive and selective colleges. The last thing I mentioned to you is the alumni networks you come away with from a more competitive college. The individuals who are attending more competitive colleges are much more likely to move up the economic food chain in America and have linkages to people who can help them get up the economic food chain. You, in turn, inherit those networks. You build up an alumni network that will be very valuable to you as you progress through your career, and you don't want to avoid the opportunity to build up that alumni network. And there's just many instances of how all of us have been able to draw upon those networks in our career to open doors or to give us access to a resource that we might need to help us get through another hurdle or door later in our career. So those would be the things I would lay out to you to say the non-academic reasons of going to a competitive college. So I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Aish, who Chandra will introduce. Chandra, I'm not hearing you. I don't know if others are. Aish, are you hearing Chandra?
No.
No.
Chandra?
Well, I will introduce Aish because I can introduce her. So Aish has been with SEO. All of you have met Aish. So at one UBS NextGen leader event or another, or coming to the office. So let me turn it over to Aish, and Aish, it's on you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for participating in this conference call tonight, and I hope that it will shed some light on your college decision process that you'll be taking on in the next few weeks. So in addition to what Julian said, a little bit about myself. I joined SEO in 2006, and I think that's when most of you were still in elementary school. I'm the Vice President of SEO College Scholars, and I basically oversee the college support that all the SEO scholars receive while they're in college, and I'll also be overseeing the support that the UBS NextGen leaders have during their 4 years of college. So this evening, in addition to what Julian shared, I wanted to tell you a few things about the important decisions that lie ahead, and as you and your family are going to be choosing which school you go to. As I'm speaking, I want you to also type in questions into the YouTube comments box. I suspect that this has already been happening, but I encourage you to keep doing that, or email Chandra directly, and similar to our past workshops, we also have our texting option open for you as well in the email that you had already received, and I will answer them at the end. So last week you received a copy of the Barron's rankings and also a detailed college profile that I hope you've already been looking at. The first thing I want you to all do is to go through every single school that you've been admitted to and highlight them in the Barron's list. Literally, with a highlighter, go through the list and see the tiers of the colleges that you've been admitted to. You want to see the categories of where your schools fall, the categories of most competitive, highly competitive, and very competitive, and so on. Then I want you to take a look at the college profile document. That is the Excel sheet that you received. Look for the schools again, and especially look at the columns that show the retention the school has and the graduation rates. You want both of those numbers to be very high. It means that the students are staying in the school, and it also means that the students aren't being kicked out of the school, which are great signs. And the four-year graduation rate is really important as well, because it shows that you're at a school that values college completion and that it works to help you graduate. Also a great sign. At the end of this conference call or this hangout, there are three really, really important messages that I want to make sure that you get from us. The first one, ultimately, it's incredibly critical for you to go to the best school that you can go to. Schools that are higher in the tiers have more of everything, but especially money. And loans, in and of themselves, are not a bad thing. It really depends on what you're taking the loan for and for how much. So, a law professor at Vanderbilt University did a research study on the importance of going to a good school. The National Survey of College Graduates surveyed 178,000 grads, and what they found is really astounding. They found that the higher the tier of the school you go to, the more you make when you graduate right after school. If you go to a lower tier school, it is hard for you to catch up to make as much money even after you go to a great graduate school. Sadly, though, what they found is that it's very unlikely that you'll be able to go to a great graduate school at all if you don't go to an elite school for college. Only 3% of the students attending non-competitive colleges are admitted to competitive graduate schools. So, say you're a high-achieving and high-ability student and you attend a non-selective college for whatever reason, on average, statistics show that you will be unable to overcome the initial placement by moving up to an elite graduate school. You're never going to catch up to the people that make more money than you if you go to a non-competitive school. So many students make the decision to attend a school that they and their family find affordable because there's a good financial aid package or a local college that allows them to save money on room and board, even if the school isn't very competitive. Some of these students are choosing to go to a lower tier school for reasons of affordability, even if they've been admitted to a higher ranked school. So choosing not to go to a top school is essentially throwing away money at the end of the day. So at SEO, our real-life experiences very much match what the statistics say. It isn't so much the cost of the school, but the tier of the school that has long-term employment and financial stability impact. So, and I've seen this, similar to Julian, year after year after year of working with college students at SEO. So when given the option of taking out loans, we've seen that it's much more strategic to take out some loans to attend a higher ranked school than to have less or no debt and attend a lower ranked school. What you want to try to avoid is to take out loans for non-competitive schools. We see that the higher tier schools help students earn money faster, which means that they pay off their loans faster. So students that go to non-competitive schools and take out loans are then unable to get a high-paying job after college, and as a result, they're not able to pay back the loans as quickly. I'll tell you a few facts about the schools that are in the top tiers, in addition to adding on to what Julian had already mentioned earlier. And this goes way back to the fall when we shared information with you in the college application workshop about the benefits of going to a top school. Your cohort managers, Chandra and Christina, worked with you to include schools that were competitive in your college lists that you were compiling. There's a reason we've been encouraging you to think outside of the box and apply for the top schools that you're actually qualified to go to. Better ranked schools have a great number of benefits, and here are a few more that I'm going to add to what Julian just said. So higher tier schools have higher four-year graduation rates. You can also see this in the detailed profile that I referred to earlier to see the rates for some of the institutions you've been looking at. So what does this mean for you? You get to start your career early and you start making money earlier to pay off your debt earlier. So why would you stay in college longer than 4 years when you can start making money after 4 years? There's more recognition around the country and on the globe if you go to a better ranked school. So the brand will speak for itself. Why would you wear no brand shoes if someone is handing you a pair of Jordans, for example? As Julian mentioned, you're also going to have incredibly expensive networks with alumni that are heavily engaged, and they're very, very willing to advise on your career options and choices alumni that go to top-tier schools are very, very involved with their alma mater, and that's something you'll also have access to. And as Julian mentioned, there's going to be more employment and internships that are connected to your school with skilled employers. And that's where the best companies go to hire the students. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that down the line. So there's another research opportunities on campus where you can spend the summer doing research with renowned scientists and get involved with their work and are a huge benefit to you. There's leadership roles and opportunities at your campuses. Higher tier schools to have more money to put into student development. So you can even start your own course if you don't find something that you like. These schools have more students who go to graduate schools, especially medical and law schools. The best graduate schools in the country want students from the best colleges in the country. So if graduate school is on your mind down the line, you definitely want to go to a top-tier school for your undergrad. Higher ranked, especially private schools, have larger endowments, more grants instead of loans, and you can appeal your financial aid as well. So as you'd heard in the financial aid workshop in February that we did, you can and you should be appealing your financial aid. Top-tier schools can help you lower your loans and give you more aid. The small loan you may have to take out to go to a top-tier college will pay for itself when you actually graduate, and that's a really, really smart investment. It seems unfair, that you're evaluated on the school you go to and not necessarily how smart you are. And we've seen this play out many, many times. I've had students over years who are incredibly smart and hardworking PAs at schools that are not in the top tiers. They struggle so much just to get a company to pay attention to them to get an internship. Meanwhile, the students at top-tier schools are already where the big companies are looking to hire, similarly to how we have seen an SEO career program that Julian talked about. And when a big advertising agency or a big investment bank or Google or Facebook are looking to hire employees, they first ask me where the student goes to college, then they ask me for other details. So even if you hold a leadership position, you're on Dean's List as a finance major, and you're an athlete, and you're committed to your future and everything, and just a lot of non-competitive college, you may still not be noticed by the company. So all this to say, you've been getting admissions letters from your schools. Don't just go to the cheapest school. Go to the best school, and there's a really huge payout at the end. And I can take some questions from you, Chandra.
Thank you, Aish. So we do have some questions from the viewers. I will start with one. How important is it to graduate in 4 years?
It's incredibly important to graduate in 4 years. So if the traditional length of a college degree is 4 years long and you take longer than 4 years to graduate, companies and employers, especially the big competitive ones, are looking at, well, why is it taking you longer than 4 years to graduate? They look at that as you're doing it slower than what other people are supposed to do. So why are you taking longer than 4 years to do something that other students can graduate in 4 years? But more importantly than that, every semester that you're in school longer than you need to be, you are throwing away money. So just for income purposes, it's more important for you to finish college in 4 years so you can start making money.
Wonderful. Thank you. So my parents don't understand the importance of attending a competitive school. Can you help me in identifying some points that can guide our discussion?
So that is a really, really good question. So when parents don't understand necessarily the value of going to a top-tier school, it is probably because they are uneasy about taking out the loan to go to a school that is better in ranking. And as I illustrated earlier, and as Julian had also talked about, it is so critical for people to understand, and I'm open and willing to discuss with anyone's family as they need about the importance and the value that students get from going to a top-tier school, that if there is a small, and again, this is really dependent on the family's financial situation, if you are able to take out a loan to go to a higher and more competitive school, your parents are going to make more money ultimately in the end because you're more likely to graduate from college in 4 years. Remember I said if you look at the graduation rates of those schools, top schools have higher graduation rates. So if you go to a good school, even with a small loan, you'll graduate from college faster and you'll be able to pay back that loan faster. And I feel so strongly about this because we work very much in the employment area as well, in addition to SEO careers. So when you're working with someone who wants to get a job, as I said, you could be working really hard and pushing yourself to succeed at a non-competitive school that you've taken no loans out for. You have absolutely no debt, but you're also not going to find it easy to get a job when you graduate. So the person who took out the debt, who took out the loan early on, is actually going to have a job faster and be done paying off that loan faster by the time the person that has no loans is still looking for a job.
Great, thank you. So a college with an 81% graduation rate, would they be considered competitive?
I'm sorry, you just broke out a little bit. One more time.
A college that has an 81% graduation rate, is that considered competitive?
The best way that you want to see the competitiveness of your schools is to look at where they are in the Barron's ranking. So when you pull up the profiles of all the schools, you want to actually find out where the school is. Graduation rates are really important too, but the most important thing that you want to look at is the Barron's rankings of that school.
Okay, wonderful. Is it smart to take out private loans?
As a last resort. The reason we recommend that you take out as many federal and subsidized loans as possible is that the interest rate doesn't kick in. One, it has a low interest rate, and you also don't have to pay it back until after you're done with college, versus private loans that have historically much higher rates, and they are much more variable, so they can go up and down, and they start accruing interest while you're still in school.
Great, wonderful. If I attend a school that's in a tier 3 or 4, how can I maximize my college experience to make sure I'm ahead of the game?
So a top 3 tier school is actually considered a really competitive school. We really encourage our students to go to schools that are in the top 3 tiers. So if you're in the top 3 tiers, as Julian said, one of the really important things, in addition to going to a really good school, is also having a really high GPA. You need to make sure you're doing really well academically, because even Google and Facebook, they're not trying to hire someone that goes to Cornell but has a really, really low GPA. You still need to have a high GPA in addition to going to the Cornells or to the Baruchs or to the NYUs of the world. So if you're going to a tier 4 school, which is just one below very competitive, you have to work a lot harder to get noticed. But again, if you've gotten admitted into a school in the top 3 tiers and you're weighing up the options of potentially looking at a 4th tier school, we really strongly recommend that you go to a school in the top 3 tiers, and then on top of that, you need to make sure that you're a leader on campus and that you're involved and that you have a really high GPA.
Great. So the next question, would a school like Baruch offer the same opportunities as NYU?
Absolutely not. And I have nothing against Baruch. I love Baruch. But when you're looking at the tiers, so there's tier 1, which is the most competitive colleges. If you're going to a school that is the most competitive college, it has a much more recognized brand. It has much more extensive networks. It has a much more rigorous curriculum of education than schools as you go down the tiers. So if you're comparing Baruch and NYU, you absolutely want to go to NYU. You're going to have access to more money. You're going to have access to more scholarships. You're going to have access to really incredible faculty. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Baruch, but when you're looking at getting into school or choosing the school that is the highest rank of your list that you got admitted to, you want to go to the ones that are as high up as possible. And if Baruch is the highest that you've gotten into, it's a fantastic school. You want to go to Baruch.
Fantastic. So I was recently accepted into Johns Hopkins, but I've already submitted a commitment deposit to Stony Brook. What do I do?
So Stony Brook is a fantastic college. It is very high ranked. I guess I would need a follow-up question from that student that asked that question in terms of if they want to go to if they've already committed to Stony Brook and they wanted to go to St. John's, Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins.
Chandra. Oh, Johns Hopkins. So you definitely want to go to Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins over Stony Brook. I'm sorry, sometimes there's a little bit of a delay. Go to Stony Brook and you haven't put down the deposit, and even if you have put down the deposit, and if Johns Hopkins is the school that you and your family are comfortable with you going to, you definitely want to go to Johns Hopkins. So one of the benefits also to going to a really top-tier school that is a private school, as I mentioned before, their endowments are huge. Some of the big schools have endowments that are upwards of $1 billion, and they're able to give and work with that amount of money to give you more money to help you afford to be able to go there. State schools, again, Stony Brook is a fantastic school, but if you have gotten a financial aid package from Stony Brook, you are a little bit more capped than a school like Johns Hopkins that can keep giving you more money to be able to make it affordable for you.
Wonderful. So I received hardly any financial aid and barely received a Pell Grant. What are the options I can take besides loans and scholarships?
So that really will depend on the school that you got admitted into. So if you did not get I would need to know a little bit more about the school, but if you have a really, really atrocious financial aid package that makes it really difficult for you to go to that school, you're clearly not going to go to that school if it's completely unaffordable. There are times I've heard about schools asking students to take out $25,000 of loans a year. There is no way we would ever encourage or allow or want any student to take out that many loans per year to go to any school. Again, it's a lot of the schools that are non-competitive, low competitive, that are ones that are telling you to take out loans. We don't want you to do that. But if you get a terrible, atrocious financial aid package, depending on the school that you got into, you should be able to go back and ask for more funds. Really show that you're committed to the school, especially if it's a good school. If it's a top 3-tier school, you really need to go and fight for more money because they will have it. The Pell Grant is a federal grant program, and it is finite. That may or may not change. But the school that you got admitted to, depending on its rank, if it's a private school, if it's a public school, there might be some more leeway for you to contact the financial aid office or the admissions office and say, you're really committed to the school, what more can they do? They might ask you to take out more loans, federal and subsidized loans. You want to try to veer away as much as you can from the unsubsidized loans that are private loans as much as possible. That is a complete last resort. We don't want you taking out too many private loans.
Okay, thank you. How important is it to go to a college with a decided degree? Does it save money or let you graduate faster?
With a what degree? I'm sorry.
With a decided degree, so a declared major.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
How important is it to go to a college with a decided degree? Does it save money or let you graduate faster?
No, we generally recommend that you don't go in with a declared major. You want to go in and you want to explore, because sometimes if you go in with a degree and you've decided you're going to be an econ major or an engineering major, they will put you into courses that are called weed-out courses, and what that means is that they are going to put everybody into the first year of engineering, or everybody into the first year of pre-med classes, and they're essentially going to only take 30 to 35% of those students into the second year. It's a weed-out program, and traditionally students that are first generation or low income that are going to competitive colleges are really unprepared to be able to handle the course load. So what we recommend is go in undecided and explore. Your world has always been this big, it's been tiny, and when you get to college you're going to experience something significantly bigger. So explore and see what you're good at, see what you enjoy. Just because you always thought you wanted to be an engineer may not mean that you should be an engineer. You may not have the runway to be able to be an engineer within 4 years. If it was 10 years long, you might be able to become an engineer in 10 years. But you really want to go in to explore and see what other options there are, because high schools don't really tell you what all the different careers are. So not going in undecided is good. Go in undecided, undeclared, and really explore. Colleges have a good way of making sure that you're still able to take the classes by the time that you need by the end of your senior year.
Okay, great. Thank you. I got waitlisted for a college I want to attend. It's one of my best choices, but their decision for waitlisted students might exceed May 1st.
That's a little bit of a gamble. So if you have gotten into other schools that you are fine going to, that you're happy to attend, that are in the top 3 tiers, I would recommend putting in a deposit for that. It is non-refundable. That's the other thing. But later on, if you do get the admission to the school that you are waitlisted on, then you can, you lose the. You end up losing the deposit that you put down. But we do recommend that you actually go to the school that you get all the wait for, provided again you have to wait some of the financial deductions. But you want to have something in the bag. You don't want to wait less before you can pick one of the
Chandra,
Yes.
let me just add to that. Actually, very few students get off wait list. Right? While it's not generally explicitly told by admissions officers, in some years no one gets off the wait list, right? Because they over-admit to begin with. So if a disproportionate number of students don't decline, then actually there's no one getting off the wait list. So you should treat the wait list as, it's a 1 in 100 shot. In reality, sometimes they may have 2,000 people on the wait list and they take 8 people, or 10 people, or 15 people. So treat, as Aisha was saying, put your deposit down on the school that you are most interested in beyond the one you're waitlisted on. See what happens. If you forfeit your deposit because the waitlist to come through, wonderful. But recognize that it is a low percentage game, unfortunately.
Okay.
And also, if you got admitted, if you were waitlisted for a top-tier college, remember most people are not going to turn it down. Most people want to get into the top-tier schools. So even if you didn't get in, you're on your wait list, unlikely that someone's going to pull out unless they got admitted even to a higher tier than that.
Okay, thank you. Would a public college offer the same non-academic advantages as a private college?
Would a public college offer the same advantages as a private college, you said?
Non-academic.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Would a public college offer the same non-academic advantages as a private college?
Short answer, no, but there are ways of making it happen. So public schools, big state schools have other types of opportunities that they share with the students. But in terms of per student availability of non-academic things, whether it's starting clubs or opportunities on campus or just the dollars that each student club even gets to be able to host events and to be able to bring in, whether it's someone who is a celebrity or a singer or a concert that you'll be able to get subsidized tickets to, it is much easier to access all of those non-academic resources and some of the treats, I'm going to say, in a private school, just in terms of you'll have more access to dollars you'll have more access to dollars as a student at a private school than you would at a public college.
Chandra, I want to add to that. Okay.
Sure.
So, a little bit just to kind of give additional flavor on it. There are some public institutions that are very prestigious. So if you go to a non-prestigious private institution that kind of is fairly unknown, you'll pay, if they don't have a lot of money, as Aisha's alluded to, the more prestigious ones have more money. So let's say you wind up paying more because it's not as prestigious. So if you go to University of Michigan, you go to Berkeley, you go to UCLA, you go to University of Wisconsin at Madison, you go to SUNY Binghamton, you go to Stony Brook, you go to Baruch, those schools have more value to employers than a number of private schools that are non-competitive private schools. So there are exceptions to it. All in all, obviously private schools generally are more selective, but there are exceptions to it. So you really want to confer with Aisha or someone to kind of split the difference or split hairs on that.
Great, thank you. How can you negotiate with colleges to accept all credits from other universities? For example, St. John's, CUNY, Queens College. I also have a 90 or above A on all classes. I have 60 college credits.
So traditionally, and there's thousands of colleges, but traditionally what happens is if you get a C or above on all your college credit-worthy classes that are either College Now classes or classes that you were taking in high school as part of a college pathway program or a bridge program. Traditionally, all the classes that you take that you get a C or above in will be transferred to the institution. There are some big exceptions to this. So first, they will not necessarily accept the credits that are going to be in your major. So even if you've taken an accounting class, the school is not going to accept the credit as an accounting class. They might accept it as an elective class. So each school will vary, and you won't necessarily get 100% of the credits that you took. It really depends on the school and the institution that you're taking it to. Some schools have agreements where they will take it all. For example, if you've gone to Bard Early College, then those credits will transfer directly as an associate's degree, and you will come in as a junior to that school. But it really depends on the credits that you've gotten, the grades that you've gotten, not just the 90s in terms of the test scores, but the actual grade that you got at the end of the class. And then it really also depends on what classes you're trying to transfer over to the program. So if you're transferring English just as an elective to the college, that traditionally I have not seen to be a problem. But in the technical classes, whether it's bio or chem, lab, calculus, engineering, cognitive science, technology classes, computer science, any of those more scientific STEM-based classes are much more challenging to transfer to a college class and then jump grades, because colleges don't necessarily think that a high school-based college class is as challenging as what it would be in college.
Okay, thank you. What date do you recommend for us to have our schools picked by?
As soon as possible. So if you have gotten admitted into a school that is in the top 3 tiers and you're still waiting for your financial aid package, obviously you have to wait for that to come. But if you've gotten admitted into a top tier school, a series of top tier schools, and that you're excited to go to, I would highly recommend that you, as much as close to before May 1st as possible, to claim your spot. Because once, after you have not claimed your spot on May 1st, your admission seat is given up. So you can't wait on it and then go back to that same school and say, oh, I'm sorry, I was late, I had to weigh up some of these options. You want to commit to the school before May 1st. Obviously, there's going to be some outstanding situations about financial aid that you'll have to deal with in May and June, negotiating that. But you still want to pick your spot as soon as you know that you can commit to one of the schools. Obviously, talking with your family, Chandra and Christina and I are also available to answer some questions as you're going through the college decision process with your financial aid. But you want to make those commitments as quickly as you can.
Sure. I'm stuck between deciding Trinity College and Hunter College. Which would you recommend?
Trinity. Easy answer. Trinity College is a fantastic liberal arts college at SCO. We've had a great number of students that have gone there. They're incredibly successful. There's a lot of resources. It has a hugely fast network. We have a student that just graduated from Trinity College last year, and basically an alum that she met from Trinity College that was at an event there got her a position at a very prominent law firm as a paralegal before she even graduated from college, just because of the network she was exposed to. So I would highly recommend Trinity. Great campus, great professors, great faculty. Obviously Hunter is also fantastic, but if you had to pick between the two, I would recommend Trinity.
Thank you.
I just want to add on to Aisha's answer. Trinity is one of those colleges that very well-to-do folks whose kids don't get into the 8 schools of the Ivy League because there's a zillion kids just like them applying to the Ivy League, but they're very talented. Trinity is one of those colleges that they pick for their kids. So as Aisha was talking about the alumni network, your peers there will provide you with access over the long term to pretty much anything you want. The problem, Hunter's a wonderful school, one of the best of the CUNY schools, great history. The differences at that level, if you're talking about Hunter Day, the elementary school or the high school, wealthy people send their kids to the K through 8 school, but they don't send their kids who are very accomplished to Hunter as an undergrad typically. So that's what you would miss out. Good education, but you kind of miss out with the network that you could create, which is truly invaluable.
Thank you. Are Wesleyan University and University of Rochester selective schools to attend?
Yes, very selective schools, great tier schools.
Wonderful. Where do you draw the line between risk and investment when it comes to taking out loans for school?
That is a very loaded question. I would need to see the numbers. I would need to see the list of schools. I would need to see the dollar amount that you're looking to take out. So I don't want to tell you this is the ranked school, this is the dollar amount, you should avoid this, you should not avoid this. I don't want to make it too technical, but the line is between, if you look at the tier of the school and the graduation rate of that school, generally it will be a good investment to take out loans to go to a school that is in the top 3 tiers, that also has a very high graduation rate. That is a good investment to make. But just because a school is a private school does not guarantee that the school has a high graduation rate. I've had conversations with some of the candidates, really excited and committed to going to certain private schools that are, not competitive at all, but the student is trying to find a tremendous amount of money in loans and scholarships to go to a school that is not competitive, even though it's private and has a lot of other perks. It's not worth it to take out any loans to go to a college that is not competitive, because it doesn't make it easy to pay it off. So when you hear about that huge trillions of dollars that students that in student debt, it is not necessarily the students that have gone to a competitive college and took out smart loans. I call them smart loans because you'll be able to pay those off. It pays for itself eventually, and you get a job right away. But if you take a really large loan out and you're attending a non-competitive school, you're not going to get a job very quickly, and because you're not going to get a job, you won't be able to pay back your loans, and that's when you're going to default. We don't really have any students from SEO that have, and I'm sure in the career program, that have taken out loans to go to a competitive college and then not been able to get a job and not been able to pay back their loans. We don't have any defaults that I know of at all over the last 9+ years that I've been with SEO.
Okay. Is it encouraged to graduate in 3 years or less?
It depends. So we've had students that have done that because they had a huge number of credits that they brought in that were accepted. So the example I'm thinking of is a student who had a lot of AP credits and a lot of college narrow credits from high school. She came in a year ahead and went to Wheaton College and was able to graduate in 3 years, and that really worked well for her, and she started working a year ahead of all of her peers. And so if you are able to make it happen, yes. But sometimes what happens is if you come in with a lot of extra credits and you only have 2 years in college, remember, college is going to be very difficult. It's a completely different, it's a different landscape. It's a different world. Even if you've taken college, there's a lot of difficulty that students face, no matter how prepared you think you are when you get to college. So when you only have 2 years, you prevent yourself from having it come back. So if you get into college as a junior, because you already have 2 years of credits, you come in as a junior and you take some really, really challenging classes and you do really, really badly, you don't have any time to recover from that because you're trying to finish in 2 years. So if you're in a program that's going to really challenge your GPA, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend taking the 3 years or taking enough time to make sure you have a good GPA. Remember what Jillian was saying, what I said, it's not just about going to a good school and finishing as fast as you can. If no one cares that you finished in 2 years, if your GPA is a 2.5, you'll have a college degree, but you won't necessarily be able to get a job quickly because your GPA is really low. So you do want to be able to make that, it's a very important strategic conversation to have with yourself, but also think about the degree that you're going for, how many credits you're bringing in. Just because you're trying to do it quickly doesn't mean you're going to do it well.
Great. I was admitted to NYU Poly, and it has recently been merged with NYU. Does this make it a more competitive college?
To some degree, yes. It is currently not ranked in the same way, but it's definitely a high-ranked school, yes.
Okay. All of my schools are Tier 3 schools. However, I am being considered for EOP under SUNY Albany, of which I am considering doing their 3-3 program if I'm accepted. The 3-3 program is a program that lets you use your 4th year in Albany to enter your first year of law school. If I do this, do you think I will have a higher chance of going to a competitive law school?
So the first 2 schools are which 2?
Tier 3. All of the schools of which the student's been accepted are Tier 3 schools.
Mm-hmm. So Yeah. So in terms of doing a, doing a 3-3 program where you're one of the years is a first year of law school, is that what it is, Chandra?
Correct.
Okay.
The fourth
So
year is
yes,
law school.
yeah. So I it really, really depends on your performance in college in terms of the getting into a good law school. But you also want to make sure that you're doing really well on the LSATs. And not all law schools are created equal. So you want to go to as high ranked, a top 10 law program in order to get a very, to get into our corporate law program, our law program at SEO. And in addition to getting into being a lawyer at a top law firm, you want to go to a top 10 law school. So that is a really, really competitive process. So even if you've done 1 year of law school, you still need to have above a 3.7, and you still need to have a really high LSAT score in order to get into a very competitive law school. There's a lot of applications that go into law schools, and there's a lot of people that have law degrees, but just because you went to law school doesn't mean you're going to get a job as a lawyer. You still need to go into the top 10 law schools in order to start a lucrative career in law.
Okay. Would going to a Tier 3 public school be the same academic experience as a Tier 3 private school?
It really depends, but I'm going to say it really depends on the schools. I don't know how to compare. If I had the names of the schools, maybe, but I think that in general, if you're going to a private school, in your mind, outside of some of the public schools that Julian mentioned, like some of the UCs, University of Michigan, there are a handful of public colleges in the country that have a phenomenal, that have a lot of access to resources, have a great brand recognition in terms of the type of school they are. So it depends on the public school, but in general, private schools it depends on the tier. You always want to look at the tier, but if they're both in the Tier 3, then I'm going to look a little bit more closely at the private school.
Okay.
But it really depends on the college, but I'm going to go probably a little bit more with the private school.
Thank you. I got accepted to 4 schools in Tier 1 and 2, and their financial aid is almost identical. So how would I decide which college to attend?
Tier 4 and Tier 2, you said?
I got accepted into 4 schools total. 2 are in Tier 1 and 2 are in Tier 2. They are offering pretty identical financial aid packages. So how do I decide which school to attend?
You should go to one of the schools in the Tier 1 category. The amount of money that you will make, again, the research that I was referencing earlier basically said at the starting level, when they see students going into Tier 1 versus Tier 2 versus Tier 3 and then Tier 4 is somewhere else, your income level is going to be higher. When you graduate from college from a Tier 1 school that is the most competitive, that is the first tier group of schools that you're going to see in the Barron's rankings. Any school in that category, obviously you need to do well in those schools, but graduating from one of those schools in the top tier category is going to put you ahead in terms of lifetime earnings that you're going to have that are greater than anyone at a Tier 2, again, greater than anyone at a Tier 3. So the higher the tiers are, your starting level of income that you're going to earn is going to be higher, and it's going to be harder for any. So if you're taking a Tier 2 school over a Tier 1, you're throwing away the difference that you would make in money when you graduate literally out the window. And if their financial aid packages are the same, I don't know why you wouldn't go to a Tier 1 school.
Chandra?
Unless there's other much different considerations that you want to take into account.
Sandra, I just want to add to that too. Remember, so there are Tier 1 schools, and if one has the good fortune of being admitted to 2 Tier 1 schools, then you want to look carefully between the 2 even, because there are Tier 1 schools that have much more prominent reputations than others. Right? So those people who are, kind of very familiar with the academic universe would recognize some names as Tier 1. Others would not know the school as Tier 1, but if you look at the admissions selectivity, it's Tier 1 as well as the graduation rates. So I would be looking among the Tier 1 schools to see the one that will give you the most lifetime traction. Right? I mean, the reality is you'll enjoy either school you attend. They're nice, you're in college, they have nice campuses, you're around a bunch of 20-year-olds. There's not a lot to dislike. So then you really want to look at what's the long-term horizon, and that's what Aisha's been emphasizing in all of our points here. So come back and have a conversation with Aisha or someone between those two Tier 1 schools. We want to know what they are and can give you a perspective on the relative merits of those two Tier 1 schools.
Great, thank you both. So at this time, we want to conclude the question and answer session. I know that there's been lots of conversation about tiers throughout this webinar, and I just want to remind you guys that you have received multiple emails, one most recently as Friday, indicating a college profile as well as the Barron's ranking list. Both of these attachments in your emails will be helpful in identifying which schools that you've been admitted to are within which tiers, and ultimately assisting you in selecting the most competitive college that you will attend. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for attending. Aisha and Julian, I'd like to thank you for your commentary, as it's been great and thoroughly informative. And if you guys should have any additional questions, please feel free to continue to email as well as text myself or Christina Velez. Thank you and have a good night.